Welcome back. Fantasy football time. Dave Richard, CBS Sports. Now, I know we had him last year. Last year was like preseason. Or last week. I like preseason. I mean, he was in regular season form, don't get me wrong. But let's be honest, this is the week, as I just said in the last segment. This is where you should be having your fantasy drafts. Preseason's over. I believe fantasy drafting should be made federally illegal prior to the final preseason game. Final preseason game ends between there and the draft. That's where you should be drafting. 12th year with us from CBS Sports, Dave Richard. Good morning, David.
How did I survive 12 years?
I don't know, dude, but desperation, loneliness.
I mean, I think the larger question is, how did you survive 12 years?
You know, the radio station is an escape from my family. It's my happy place. So honestly, in fantasy football coming up, we were talking about traditions / punishments. Now, I know you're in 146 leagues and it's part of your job and you have to be, but have you ever been a part of a league that had either a fun tradition or a fun punishment going there?
Would you believe that the answer to that question is no?
I would not believe that. Really?
All the leagues I'm in, and I'm playing leagues with people at work and buddies that I've known since high school, family members, all that stuff. Never a punishment, never anything bad if you finish in last place.
I was saying our big punishment isn't for whoever finishes in last. It's if anybody shows up late to the draft, if we're waiting on them, let's say it's at 5:00, they show up at 5:01, and inevitably almost every year it happens. We have an old Pink Panther mascot costume that just stinks of beer and BO that they have to wear for the entire draft. I feel like that's fair.
Yeah, that's rough. That's really rough. Like if I knew that I had to wear that for the entire draft and I got my hands on it before the draft, I'd take it to the dry cleaners.
Of course, but you don't. No, that's the thing. Then inevitably someone's there.
And then, so now I've got this stinky thing in my house for 360. Where does it go after I wear it on draft day?
It's usually at the host of the same person usually hosts the draft, but if not, whoever had it last will bring it over, and then it's just sitting there. And the guy shows up and he's late, and everybody says, "Put it on." Put it on, and then he's just gotta throw the thing on, and he's gotta sit there and drive. We all take pictures with him. It's fun.
Is there a picture of you in this outfit?
Not once. Nope. But the reason is not because I'm some punctual studly dude. No, the reason is usually I like to I usually host them almost always. 95% of the time I host the draft, and if I don't. Because when I host, I usually cook for everybody. And even when I go on the road, most of the people in my league aren't the best cooks. So I'll usually bring something over. So I always get there early. I get there early so I can prep everything. So, because you got to eat before the draft, You're
like the social coordinator of your league.
I mean, I was lamenting this in the last segment. It's the older I feel like I get, the more people start dropping off of the in-person. And if you move away, that's fine. And I know, again, with your job, you've got to draft online probably almost everything, but I think there's nothing like the in-person draft, everyone talking garbage and laughing. Some of these guys you don't see at all except that year. And then everybody inevitably, they say the two biggest times in the world that people lie is before a romantic interaction and after a fantasy football draft, because everybody has won the championship.
Very good.
So how are you doing? And I guess I'll start out with the question, of course, everybody asks, who or whomst is the person or people that are coming out at you as the ones that are getting forgotten the most, the ones that are dropping the furthest when they shouldn't? Who has been consistently what you've seen as the best values coming out of your draft so far?
We actually got done talking about this on our podcast just now. There are a number of wide receivers who have an ADP of round 5 or later that really shouldn't have an ADP of what they have. And that sentence sounded a little silly, but I'll give you some examples. Malik Neighbors is a late round 5 pick in CBS ADP. What that means is that on average, he's getting picked round 5, round 6, maybe even later, people are not waking up to the fact that this guy is going to be a target monster in New York. Yes, his quarterback is terrible, but he's still going to get a lot of targets, and he is an outstanding playmaker after the catch, and he's outstanding at getting open deep downfield. He is a great do-it-all wide receiver. Malik Neighbors should be a 3rd-round pick, not a 5th-round pick. Other wide receivers that are just going way late in drafts, and I'm targeting these guys, Dave. Calvin Ridley, Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin. These are 3 names right here. I've got all 3 of them ranked ahead of Michael Pittman, Stephon Diggs, Zay Flowers, names that you know, names that fantasy receivers have had some success with at some point or another in the last 1 to 5 years in the case of Diggs. But I think that they're all in much better situations to get more targets, to do more with them, and to be very productive after they had sort of a down year. And even Ridley, with all the touchdowns he scored last year, I think he had a down year. Those are the guys that kind of stand out to me, along with the advice that I'll give everybody, which is, and this goes hand in hand with what I said about Neighbors, don't be hesitant with the rookies, especially the wide receivers. This was an outstanding rookie wide receiver class. You all know about Marvin Harrison. His ADP is late round 2. He should be an early round 2 pick. Neighbors, we already talked about. But then there's other rookie receivers like Xavier Worthy, like Rome Odunze, Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey. These are all guys that should be on a fantasy roster. And if you're sitting there in round 8 or later and they're there, you should jump on them. Brian Thomas, I don't even think I said his name.
No.
He should be a round 7 pick. He's ridiculously good. Be open to taking at least one rookie receiver in your draft this year.
Let's talk fundamentals. When people draft, a lot of times they either put too much or too little, depending on the camp you're in, emphasis on bye weeks. What is your strategy? Are you a load up for, if you can, load up the bye weeks? Or are you a separate the bye weeks? Or are you the, I'll deal with it when I deal with it, I'm drafting the best player, I don't care what the bye week is?
Mostly I deal with it when I deal with it, because there's going to be 1 week where you don't have some players, and you don't want to have 1 week where you don't have everybody. You know, you don't want to draft, you know, I'm just looking at the NFL schedule right now. You don't want to have Travis Kelce, Puka Nacua, Devon Achane on the same team. They're all on bye in the same week. So you kind of want to diversify there. It's sort of like drafting too many players early on from the same team. You want to diversify your roster a little bit, just like you might with the stock market. But you do want to keep an eye on the bye weeks, and especially don't want to have your top 2 running backs or your top 2 wide receivers with the same bye. There are also 3 weeks that are going to be pains in the butts for fantasy managers this year. Week 6, that's the week where Kansas City, the Rams, the Dolphins, the Vikings, they're all on bye. Week 12 and week 14. And week 14 especially, Dave, that's the last regular season week for most people in fantasy. They're gearing up for the playoffs. Weeks 12 and 14, 6 teams on bye each week.
Wow.
It's preposterous what the NFL did to us by throwing 6 teams in there. And so let me just read off the teams, because they're not all great teams, but Baltimore is on that list. Denver is on that list. Houston and Indy. You know how many good fantasy players
oh my gosh,
there are on those 2 teams?
Yep.
New England. Do you know how none of those players right. fantasy teams? So that's one we can avoid. And even Washington. Like, I think Washington's offense is going to be a lot of fun this year. So just be really careful about those weeks 12 and 14, because there's going to be a lot of teams that are sitting out, a lot of players that are on bye. If you can work around those weeks, not have too many starters missing those games, I think your fantasy team will be in great shape to make that playoff run.
Dave Richards, CBS Sports, joining us. And let's talk about running back situations. We'll start in your neck of the woods, the Miami Dolphins. Last year, the touchdown leader in the NFL, Raheem Mostert, surprised a lot of people, won a lot of people, a lot of leagues. Devon Achane, of course, his handcuff, if you will, but we wouldn't call him a handcuff. I think he had, 8 touchdowns last year? He was a stud in his own right. What are you doing with those guys this year?
I am avoiding Devon Achane at his ADP.
Okay.
And his average draft position is late round 2, early round 3, and he does have league-winning upside. We saw it last year. He had a bunch of games with over 20 PPR points. But this is a Dolphins offense that wants to use multiple running backs week in and week out. And I was able to go to 4 Dolphins practices this August. And in all 4 of the practices, Mostert was working ahead of Achane. Not to say that he's going to be the lead back. They're both going to split. But he was working ahead of him in the 2-minute offense, in short yardage situations, in individual drills, whatever. it's clear that Mostert's got seniority, and based on what he did last year, he's going to have pole position, to use a Mike Tomlin term, to begin the season at running back. And Achane's definitely going to get work. If you go back and you look through Achane's numbers last year, the majority of his big games came in blowouts. So there's that game like the Dolphins and the Broncos. Dolphins won by 50 points. It was crazy. Yeah, Achane kind of had a coming out party that day, but a lot of the numbers came in the second half. And I don't know how many blowouts the Dolphins will be involved in. And I don't know, even if there are blowouts, if Achane is in the position to take that role, it might be rookie Jalen Wright who could be in that role. And they like Wright. And I'll tell you what, Wright looks good. All the running backs in Miami look pretty good. So I'm a little nervous about going in on Achane, knowing that almost no matter what the situation is, there will be another running back there that will take work away from him. That hurts his upside. And we know that he's got some durability issues going back to college. And that might mean that he's got some downside that people don't bake in enough.
Dave Richard joining us. You said, don't be afraid to take a rookie wide receiver. Let's switch to rookie quarterback. So you've got Caleb Williams, number 1 pick, stud out of USC. But beyond that, you have DeAndre Swift and Khalil Herbert in the backfield. They add Keenan Allen, who's a 1,000-yard receiver last year, to go with DJ Moore. Just got the highest contract in the Bears' history. We saw that on Hard Knocks. They get the number 9 pick in the draft, Rome Odunze, and some people say he was drafted too low. Cole Kmet at tight end. What are your thoughts on Caleb Williams' fantasy value and where you should be looking to grab him, if at all?
His average draft position is in round 9, and I'm fine with that. I'd probably try and wait a round later on him. I do like Jaden Daniels better because I think Daniels will rush for more yardage, and I think he's a better passer at this point than Caleb Williams, although it's very close between the two of them. However, Caleb definitely has the edge in terms of who he's throwing to. That's a really good receiving core that you just told everybody about. And the running backs are great as well. You forgot about Roschon Johnson. He's going to be a factor in Chicago. That kind of hurts DeAndre Swift's upside. And Caleb Williams will also run for some touchdowns. He was very good at that at Southern Cal. I believe he converted 9 of 11 carries at the goal line last year. So he knows how to do that, and even ran for a touchdown in the preseason. But I don't know if he can go and put up rock star numbers. I don't know if he can do what CJ Stroud did last year.
Right.
He might be able to, and he's absolutely worth taking that chance on with a late pick in the event that he does. But even the Bears owner was cautioning people this week about expecting too much too soon from Caleb Williams. He's the perfect type of number 2 quarterback to go after, knowing that he's got some great upside, but not trusting him in your fantasy lineup right away.
Last thing for you as we round up here. So Elijah Mitchell just got put on season-ending IR. Christian McCaffrey's a little banged up. Sounds like he should be okay for week 1, but despite the fact that he's been pretty healthy for San Francisco, he hasn't always been healthy his entire career. He's a year older. What, if anything, did Mitchell going on the IR do for you with Jordan Mason?
Moved up Jordan Mason into a round 10 range.
Okay.
And I've been a fan of Jordan Mason ever since he went to San Francisco. And I especially loved how he looked in the preseason. Not to be fair, preseason's preseason. It's hard to take it seriously, but he had some unreal vision and cutback ability that I don't know if I'd seen from him before. But Kyle Shanahan knew that he had it in him, and he stayed patient with him. And I think it'll pay off. And it might even be to the point where in week 1 against the Jets, that's a tough matchup. Maybe Christian McCaffrey doesn't get his normal workload. He can be effective and he can still get high value touches, but maybe there's like 7 to 10 touches in there for Jordan Mason. And you mentioned it, Dave. CMC is a year older. He's 28 years old. He's coming off of a year where he had over 400 touches if you include the playoffs. The last time he had a season where he came off of 400-plus touches, he had serious injuries the following 2 years. I'm not putting that juju on Christian McCaffrey.
Right.
I don't want that to happen. I'm taking Christian McCaffrey with the first overall pick if I get the first overall pick in my drafts. But you better believe that when my pick is up, I might have to say that first pick in round 9, I would strongly consider locking up the investment in the 49ers offense and taking Jordan Mason, because I think it's going to be Mason that backs up McCaffrey in the event that Christian McCaffrey misses time. So I'm good with him in round 10 for everybody else. But if I've got Christian McCaffrey and I've made that big investment with the top pick, I want to safeguard it because I know what a running back in this offense is capable of doing.
That's CBS Sports' is Dave Richard. A lot of time now for some people between now and the draft, whether it's tonight, over the weekend, next week. They're going to want a lot more information than we gave them. And we packed in a lot in a few minutes. So where can they find the great Dave Richard?
You can find me and the rest of the crew on YouTube. Search for Fantasy Football Today, our podcast for today, Friday. Listen, you can download it to your podcast platform and listen to it wherever you go. But you can also watch it on YouTube. It's there right now. It's an hour of ADP review. It's the perfect type of draft prep to get you ready for the weekend. And all the content's on CBS Sports. I'm on X at Dave Richard. And I've even got that sleeper for you, Dave. I know you asked last week, and I didn't settle on it.
Yeah, I've got the notes right here.
You know who it is already, but I feel like I got to tell the audience.
So just for those of you new, every year we have the Alf Morris Memorial. Now he's still with us, but the Alf Morris Memorial Sleeper of the Year. This is one of Dave Richard's. This is a big expertise thing for him. He's very, very good at this. Every year we get one name. Who is it this year? Says the guy who
Josh Palmer of the Chargers is the sleeper.
Yes.
And his ADP is into round 11, 12. And I would take him in round 9 at the absolute early, maybe even earlier than that, maybe round 8, because I think he's going to be the number 1 receiver for the Chargers. But there's a whole story on CBS Sports. I'll shoot it out on X. All the sleepers that I love this year, Jordan Mason's on that list. Chuba Hubbard, Zach Ertz. You remember him, Dave?
Yeah.
He's on that list as well. But the one that I like better than everybody else is Josh Palmer down in L.A.
24 years old, out of Tennessee, 3rd-round pick, 38 catches, 581 last year, following up an almost 800-yard year the year before. And as we talked about earlier, Keenan Allen is now on the Bears. He is the number 1 receiver on the Chargers. So there you go. And you can read more about that and more sleepers right where Dave told you to go. And always follow him on X. We'll retweet that and more coming up. All right, brother, good luck. It's going to be a long and wonderful season, and it is upon us. When we speak to you next, we will already have some official fantasy numbers in the books. I am incredibly excited.
I am very much looking forward to that. I'm glad you brought that up. And everybody's drafting this weekend, man. Good luck in your drafts. If you have any questions, shoot them over to me on X.
Here's the year 12, brother. Thank you.
Take it easy.
You too. Bye-bye. That's Dave Richard, CBS Sports. When we come back, some noise was made yesterday. Stadium talks in West Sacramento.